Okay, hello adventuresses, and today is a very special episode, and I'm actually really super excited. So we have Heather and Uta on the show today, and we kind of have a surprise, which I guess I will announce later because I feel like it. So I just would really love to get to know a little bit more about you guys because you are super important to equestrian adventuresses. I mean, you are adventuresses, and the first thing that I want to know, I just want to know a little bit about your guys' background. So Heather, if you want to start and just share a little bit, like, where are you now and what's your background with horses?
Thanks, Crystal. So my name's Heather. I'm located in Saskatchewan, Canada. So the hardest province in Canada to spell and say. So everyone usually gets a good chuckle out of that when they hear where I'm from. Been around horses since I was a baby. I think the first photo I have of myself is me sitting on my mom's horse or being held on my mom's horse when I were 2 or 3 months old. So it's kind of been in my DNA to have horses in my life. I was very fortunate growing up that I had the opportunity to participate in Pony Club, 4-H, to really, kind of learn some core values about safety, horse wellness, horse health, and just develop that passion for those crazy beasts that are, 1,500 pounds of muscle and craziness, and one word from you and they're like, oh, sorry, mom, I didn't mean to do that. So, I've been really fortunate with, being able to have horse adventures. As a teen and into my early adulthood, I was part of the Calgary Stampede show riders, which gave us opportunity to travel all over Southern Alberta promoting the Calgary Stampede. We rode in parades, we did a musical ride, and then we were so fortunate to travel with the Calgary Stampede show band to Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and throughout Europe over the course of 6 years, being able to ride different horses, experience different cultures. And I feel that really started my deep love for, going and exploring new areas and seeing, how those other horses move, how they adapt to, a Western saddle. And then as I, grew older and got married and had children, I was able to really take those, my love for it and share it with my kids and let them go through 4-H and, introduce them to, jumping over a cavaletti, that thrill of the first time you jump over it, and, to barrel racing, to, going in a costume class, riding in a parade. Those things that just, fill your soul with all, exciting things. The last few years has been really where I have found my true passion with traveling. I was fortunate enough, I did a 200-kilometer ride in 2016 in Spain, where we covered about, 30 to 40 kilometers a day. And that was something, I probably could have been fitness-wise, maybe a little bit more prepared. The first couple of days I was like, wow, I didn't know I had muscles there. But, when you're galloping on beaches and then coming up, over the top of hills, and there's these old ruins of stone buildings, and it's, it really is breathtaking to think that, people lived here 1,000 years ago and that was their home. And it really was something that made me feel in awe. You're out in the wilderness, no cell phones. You're really at the mercy of your horse to make sure you get to that next town where you're going to have a bed to sleep in.
Yeah, no, that's great. I
Yeah,
definitely can relate. I know when I lived in Italy for a little while, and I remember I had this beautiful view of the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, like the arena was looking at the sea, and I was in paradise. And I remember some of the Italians who like kind of lived in the area, they found out I was from California, and they're like, "Oh, I wish I could have lived where you are." And I'm like, "You live looking at the sea, like you're Italian. Like, I don't want to live where you are." But it is really funny, you know, how it puts things into perspective when you kind of change and you go somewhere new, and it's like that's normal for them. But yeah, it's
Right.
interesting.
Well, funny, I was in Australia quite a few years ago in the summer, well, in North America summertime, and we still went in the ocean there, and all of the locals were looking at us like, "You're crazy, and like it's winter time here. Why are you doing it?" And now it was still probably 20, 22 degrees Celsius, and wasn't, that's normal temperature for
Right.
summer in Saskatchewan at the time. So
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I'm the one looking funny. Yeah.
the traveling has just the opportunities that horses have given me, and now being an older adult, I have that opportunity to explore more and go into those you know unusual places
Yeah.
and see a little bit more.
Yeah. Perfect. So I'm definitely going to circle back, especially about the Calgary Stampede. But before I continue, I just want to hear from Uta a little bit. Now, Uta, I feel like I know you somewhat because I read your stories in our Adventuresses book series, which are on Amazon. And I absolutely loved your story. I don't want to like give it away or anything, but I'm fascinated to just hear from you. So if you could just give us a little bit of background, you know, where you're from originally, but also where you live now, and a little bit like how and the why did you end up there?
Okay, well, originally I'm German. So I grew up in Germany, and after finishing school, I just wanted to go to different places and see something of the world. And because I always had the love for horses, I did the Equestrian Adventuresses thing. I just looked for some horse jobs. So that's how I basically ended up in India. So I have been living in India now for, well, close to 20 years. So India kind of is my second home, or has become my second home. So German in India, quite unusual, but here you go.
And what was it that I think maybe attracted you specifically to India? I mean, I've been to India. I lived there, not as long as you, but there was definitely like a draw for me that I was like, I have to go there, you know? So what was kind of the trigger that made you want to go, but also what made you really want to stay?
See, going was actually chance. I got the offer of a job. So India sounded great. It sounded exotic. I'd been to Latin America quite a bit. So I'd been to Argentina, to Ecuador, to a couple of other countries, doing some horse-related job and work there. And then I got this job offer from India. There was a member of the royal or formerly royal family of Udaipur. They were looking for somebody to manage their stable. And I thought, that sounds great. And I mean, Marwari horses, that sounds like exotic and really nice change, you know, from the macho Latin American culture going to, you know, the
macho
old ancient
India.
Indian culture to macho India, exactly. So it just sounded great. And so it was really pure chance. It could have been any other place. You know, I never planned to end up living in India. I signed up for a job for 12 months to stay there 1 year, didn't do a little traveling, do my work, and then go back or find another job somewhere else. But then what happened is I bought a horse and I met my now husband. So I fell in love twice. And well, here I am 20 years later, still in India.
Right.
So it was love for the horses and meeting the right guy, I guess. So, and Viro and me, my husband, we basically bought a farm, or basically we bought a piece of land. It was totally empty at that time. And we built, the stables and the paddocks, and we built a kitchen, and we built a little house. So we built our company up from scratch. We do horse rides and horse safaris here. Both of us love horses. Both of us are really into horses. Otherwise, we could have never done that, I guess. So so that's what's keeping me here now. It's the horses, the family, I guess.
And India is one of those places. It's funny because I mean they always say like people either love it or they hate it. And, you know, I can imagine you've definitely had your good and bad days, but I remember just, yeah, it's such a colorful, busy place and no 2 days are the same. So it's definitely a special in that sense.
It is definitely a special country because I think there's no other country just as much as India, because it's such a mix, really. It has a lot of Oriental elements, you can say, a lot of Oriental culture, because I mean Islam has definitely made a big impression. It has really influenced the culture, particularly here in northern India. So you have a lot of Oriental things. You have a lot of a lot of things, like they remind me about traveling in, say, Jordan or Egypt or North Africa. But at the same time, you have this kind of old Hinduist culture, the Buddhist influence. So this mix is unique in the world. So it is, I'm not quite, I don't really like the saying you either love it or hate it, because there is some sorts of grays in between. But yeah, you need to have a certain feel for the country. If you don't like to travel in Oriental countries, India definitely is nothing for you. You need to be prepared for the unpreparable.
Yeah.
Because you never know what India will throw at you.
Yeah.
You know, it can hug you. It can give you the most intense and the most amazing experiences, and then it can give you the most horrible experiences at the same time in the same day. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I always say India is, she's definitely a very willing mistress. She can, she'll hug you, she'll slap you, and well, so it never gets boring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's basically a Bollywood movie.
Yeah, kind of.
Cool. So, Heather, circling back to you a little bit. So, for those of us that don't know what the Calgary Stampede is, I would definitely love to hear, like, what is it? I'm pretty sure I've seen the Calgary Stampede before. I don't know how old I was, but I know I've seen it, and I actually used to really love kind of seeing these sort of events and things. But yeah, if you can kind of say, you know, what is it a little bit, and also, you know, what was your daily life like during that experience?
Well, the Calgary Stampede is kind of tagged as, you know, the world's largest outdoor show. There is so many different spokes on the wheel of it, per se. There's a huge rodeo with a huge pot of prize money, chuck wagon races, an evening show with singers and dancers promoting the Western lifestyle. There's, you know, also for the kids and the adventure seekers, there's a midway with rides, as well as throughout the whole, it's situated on a big exhibition park. They have so many different agricultural theme based events, where they would have like a demo on cowboy up culture kind of thing, where they show horses doing a variety of different trail obstacles. Lots of times it's timed, and just crazy things like where they're climbing over tarps and jumping through fire hoops. And they do have barn areas where locals and people that come to visit Calgary can come and see, you know, there's sheep and pigs and goats and cattle, and for a lot of people that aren't exposed to the agricultural background or farms, you know, this might be the first time they're able to touch a horse or see a pig and those kind of things. There's a ton of food. Everybody likes fair food.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you want mini donuts or corn on the cob or deep fried Oreos, that seems to be a new one, or deep fried Snickers, everything deep fried seems to be good. But then they have, like, there's a musical influence in it with they have lots of marching bands. They have world-renowned show band competitions there, which is something, you know, when you see there's, you know, 150 kids or young adults on a stage doing movements, you know, all different instruments in sequence. It is just something else. But the Calgary Stampede really, you know, it is a culture itself in that city. You know, it falls at the beginning of July. So if it wasn't a COVID year, It would be happening right now. But you know, it's 10 days, and the city really does shut down and become this cowboy town. You know, the streets are bales of straw everywhere, fake, you know, wood fences are put up. Cowboy hats and cowboy boots are the attire for everything. You see lawyers and everything. Everybody's out in their Western duds for those 10 days, promoting that Western culture. You know, I was really fortunate with my horse being able to be part of that, because we really got to experience that showmanship, that performance, you know, to show people that had never experienced that. We would do parades, and sometimes we would do, you know, we would just kind of, we'd be stand on display, and people would take our picture, pet our horses, ask us questions. You know, lots of these people had never touched a horse before, and you know, they're all in awe by their big feet and their big noses, because most of the horses were, by time Stampede rolled around, were bomb-proof to fireworks and kids with balloons and flags, and you know, that they you know, they were very safe, so people could come up and touch their noses, and you know, and that for a lot of people, that was, you know, an experience of a lifetime, being able to be that. So a day in the life of what I was like, you know, started really early. Barn chores, feeding, grooming, you know, it never failed. If we had something to do later that day, it would always rain, so you know, you're having to bath horses, clean tack, wash leg wraps, all those kind of things. So it but it did allow us to have those experiences that, you know, you just don't get if you know, if you're not part of a bigger organization.
And how many days were you know, traveling? I mean, you said you went to like Japan and all kinds of funny places. So how many days would you be away from home? And what was that like, you know, showing up in Japan and all of the signs are squiggly?
Well, showing up in Japan at 17, our first few nights we were in Tokyo, and like you said, all the signs are in a different language. And I remember our little group had gone out. We were going to go find something to eat, and we saw the McDonald's big golden arches, and it was like a calling from heaven, something that we actually recognized. But you know, it was really interesting. What we found relatively quick is all the restaurants would have all the dishes in the window, so you could go and look and see
and
what
point.
Oh, well, that, you know, that, and point. We found very quickly on the subway, you just counted, okay, so we need to get off in 6 stops, so you know, you all kind of linked, and
you managed.
And managed. You hoped that you were able to stay on, you know, not get pulled off, because they were, when they were getting off the subway, if you were in their way, you went with them.
Okay.
So that was an adjustment. But you know, it was a beautiful country. We rode at a stable that would have, at that time, would have been the makings of a small kind of Spruce Meadows horse jumping facility. You know, that was their goal, was to become that size. We did ride. They had lots of imported quarter horses, thoroughbreds there. So, you know, it was nice to be able to ride a horse that was of, you know, familiar. But I remember one time we were in England, and we at a therapy school, that they had these big cobs, big draft type horses that really knew one speed, slow walk. and they were so big, and you know, we're trying to do different maneuvers, and it became like, nope, this is just going to be walking. And they were, you know, that's what they were trained for, that they just, you know, slow and steady. And But I remember we had these beautiful leg bandages that were part of our kind of costume type thing. And this one horse, his legs were so big, we had to use 2 leg bandages on one leg because his legs were so big. So we still often laugh about that. So, but it's been really, you know, all the travel places that I've been with horses has just, you know, there's a story from every place, whether it's, you know, in Australia, not liking the North American Western saddles and horses bucking every time you tried to do the cinch up, to, you know, the ones that would prefer us not to, you know, not to use our saddles. They would rather us ride in their own saddles.
Right. Yeah. No, it is definitely funny how I think when you start traveling, I mean, you're so overwhelmed, and, you know, like you said, like, oh, it's a McDonald's, and you kind of run to your comfort zone a little bit, but then your comfort zone becomes so big that at some point, like, I don't know, I know there's a lot of places, like I tend to go to the same countries like multiple times because I just really enjoy them, and I like learn a little bit of words in the language, or I just get really comfortable. But I definitely, like, I feel like I'm going home when I go visit those places again, you know. So I definitely see the whole, yeah, the experience that you get with the different horses and things. It can only happen in those places, which I love the most.
Right. Yes.
So, Uta, I would love to hear, you know, especially from the business perspective, because here you are, a lady, and it is a male dominated country. Like, there aren't a whole lot of women riding horses in India. And, you know, so what was it kind of like for you? You know, suddenly you're in India, and here you are, this super independent lady, and you're going to start a riding program. And just sort of take us, I mean, briefly, but like, what was that sort of process, and what was kind of going in your head? You know, was it something that you struggled with, or did it just kind of come easy because it's something that you really love doing? Or, you know, what was that like?
Well, I guess, yeah, it's India. Horse riding is a male domain, totally. There is very, very few Indian ladies who are into horses in India. Mostly girls before the marriage. Once they marry, they're usually off horses because, I mean, they have other things to do, and you know, it's supposedly, you know, they could fall off and, you know, break their bones. So usually women do not really go into riding. There's just very, very privileged few who can manage. Anyway, horse riding is not a big sport in India in terms of, you know, the normal population, let's say it that way. Horse riding has always been more towards the, say, you know, the
Elites.
The privileged classes,
Yeah.
the noble families, the elites, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there you have polo. Polo is a big Indian sport. So usually that's, you know, mostly the noble families and those people who have a lot of money. So they can afford horse riding. They can afford having horses. For the normal people, horse riding is still something pretty much they don't do. It's not a very common sport, you know, at all. So one of the biggest drawbacks in Rajasthan itself is there's virtually no pleasure riding. You know, people have horses for work. So there's mostly those horses which go into weddings. There's those horses pulling carts. There's, like us, you know, operators for you know, for tourists. And that's pretty much it. You know, there's very few people who have horses as this kind of, you know, free time activity, pleasure things. There's some people, they keep horses as kind of adornments, you know, for their farmhouse. You know, it's been very popular. If you have a farmhouse somewhere, you have a horse. You don't ride it, you don't do anything with it, but it's there. You know, it's pretty. It's usually a black stallion. You know, it's impressive. You can pull it out, or you have somebody to pull it out when you're there and your friends are there, and, you know, show off. But it's not really used. There's not really the idea of, you know, riding for pleasure. So it's something I'm trying to change a little bit. I'm trying to introduce the riding idea a little bit to, you know, the kids of my friends, bringing them up for riding, mostly girls. I love to encourage the girls to come for riding because I think if there were more girls in riding in India, things would change. The mentality would change. I think that's generally everywhere where you have mostly...
It empowers women, I feel. It's a very empowering sport because
Exactly,
it's equal.
exactly. It empowers, yeah, because it gives them a good self-confidence. You know,
Yeah.
if you can manage, you know, a 500-kilo animal, you can manage, you know, a guy. You can manage any difficult situation. So it's really good to empower girls, to empower females generally, but it's the other way around as well. If you bring females in a sport, it also changes the whole sport. You know, it's what I call the feminization of the horse riding scene. You know, women usually are doing things, they think what they do and they ask for reasons, like, why does a horse have stable vices? So when you have a lot of males, they say, okay, do something against its stable vice, but they don't really ask, why is it like this? You know, they just do things the way they've always done. Now, if you have women in the sports, they'll ask for reasons. They say, like, maybe the horse isn't happy, it needs more turnout, it needs that. So women change things for the better, particularly in the horse industry. So I think that is a big thing. So that's why I try to encourage girls to come more into riding. It's still not easy, and as I said, it's very male dominated in India, and there's very little pleasure riding, but things might change in the next couple of decades, hopefully.
Well, you know, it's one of those things, it's funny because you never know how small of something can actually create like a huge impact. I mean, even when Heather was mentioning the Calgary Stampede, and most of those kids have never seen a horse. Well, I was one of those kids. My parents didn't have horses, and you know, I wasn't wealthy. I couldn't afford riding lessons growing up. But it was because of one of those little horse pony rides that probably cost my parents $2, and they threw me on a little pony, and it changed my life forever. And I mean, I've always obsessed over horses because of that moment. And I met a girl in Bhutan, and you know, she didn't become some, you know, super rider or whatever, but you know, I was there in Bhutan. I was working to train all of the men with horses. And she was really cute. She was about my age, and she came to me, and just like you said, you know, she was kind of groomed to thinking that, you know, oh, she's just going to get married, and, you know, she doesn't really need a job or whatever. And, you know, when she was there and she was watching me, and I was in charge of all of the men, I was bossing them around, telling them what to do, how things go, how to treat the horses, clean the tag, do this. And she was kind of watching me kind of silently for a few days. And finally, she kind of came to me and she was like, you know, I didn't even know it was possible, one, that like women could ride horses. She's like, I didn't know, like mind blown, like that was even a thing. And she's like, I also didn't know that you could actually like work doing that as a woman. Like you could actually make money riding horses. And she was like,
yeah, exactly.
You know, because of you, I now know it's possible. And she's like, I'm going to tell people about this. So, you know, you never know these small things which can actually like really impact lives and change lives. And I think that's great how you put it. So yeah, I mean, as I said,
it's work in progress, but no, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm trying to give a good example, and I'm trying to particularly focus on girls, bringing them into horses. And that's one of my big projects for the future, that I would really love to go a bit more in the riding you know, lessons, encourage more of the girls to really go into that field. At the moment, it's not happening, but I hope eventually that I can go a little bit in that direction. Otherwise, I mean, as a woman in India, you cannot really do such a business on your own. So me and my husband, we do it together. So he does a lot of the outside work. He represents the company to a lot of the Indian, you know, sides, because it would be extremely difficult for me as a woman, particularly as a foreign woman, particularly as a blonde foreign woman.
Yeah.
So that is still very, very difficult. So I think on my own, alone, it would not happen, or I couldn't do it the way we can do it together. So that helps.
Yeah, perfect. No, it's nice to hear that, because I definitely tried. I definitely tried. I worked at a lot of stables, so I know the struggles. But yeah, I was on my own, definitely. So I have some sort of rapid fire questions for you guys. And I haven't done these rapid fire questions before. But basically, I'm just going to ask you a series of questions. And I want you to just kind of, I don't know, say kind of the first thing that pops your mind. And yeah, you can still kind of, I don't know, share your train of thought or whatever. But I'm going to ask multiple questions. So I'll start with you, Ute. So how old were you when you first traveled outside of Germany?
Oh, Quite old, quite young. I think I was 3 years old when I went to my stepsister's wedding in the US.
Okay. See, that's the thing about Europeans. It's just so easy. So, Heather, what about you? How old were you when you left Canada?
Um, Probably would have been 17 when I went to Japan.
Okay, was Japan your first abroad experience? Or?
That would have been the first time. Now, we may have gone to the US to like Disneyland kind of
Okay.
thing,
But it's similar enough, I guess. Japan is a real culture shock.
Yeah, it was a culture shock, that's for sure.
And so, Heather, okay, this is a little bit of a difficult question, but if you have a favorite horse breed that you've ridden, what's your favorite or what's the most unique horse you've ridden?
Well, when I was in Ireland 2 years ago, I rode this big, amazing Irish cob that was 17 hands, and he was like a beast to climb on, but he was so forward. Like when you asked for the canter, it was like, you better hold on because we're going. But as soon as you said, the wool wasn't even out of your mouth, and he was slowing down, and there he was this like teddy bear, but with all this power. And I had, at home I'd rode quarter horses and thoroughbreds, but they always tended to be a little bit more on the hotter side. Whereas he was just so, yeah, you want to go? Okay, we're stopping. And there was no fighting, no pushing. And he was just beautiful, big feet, and he was so patient when you're out in the wilderness and I'm trying to find a rock to climb on to get back on without pulling my saddle off. So
Perfect.
I would probably say the Irish Cob.
Oh, and Uta, what about you? Favorite breed or most unique breed?
Well, my favorite breed obviously is the Marwari horse, the Indian horse. I'm totally in love with them. I mean, I breed them, I have them. They are amazing horses. On the other hand, I can't say, like, I've ridden so many breeds because I'm lucky enough that, or I was very lucky that I was able to travel a lot when I was younger. So I've ridden the Criollos and the Paso Finos and the Paso Peruanos in South America. I've ridden a lot of really exotic breeds. My friend has Missouri Foxtrotters, which are amazing. I love gaited horses. That's why I like the Marwari horse as well, because some of them are gaited, not all. And they're definitely not as strongly, like it's not as strongly fixed in them as, for instance, the Missouri Foxtrotters or the Paso Peruanos or the Icelandic horses. But I still do love my gaited horses. They're amazing to ride.
That's great. It's funny because I've only recently, I think the first gaited horse I rode was last year or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, where have these been my whole life? They're so comfortable.
Yeah, they're extremely comfortable. I was lucky because I had a friend, she had Icelandic horses in the same village. So we were able to ride them sometimes. And they are great. They are the most common gaited horses in Germany. And then there's a breeder having Paso Finos nearby. Not nearby, but kind of in the vicinity. And then, as I said, my friend with the Missouri Foxtrotters in Switzerland. So I was able to ride a lot of gaited horses fairly early, I guess.
Okay, great. So, Uta, do you prefer fast horses and a terrain with lots of galloping, or do you prefer mountainy technical rides with lots of views, but maybe a bit slower?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I like my variety, actually. I love to have both. So yeah, I can't say what's my favorite. I love fast, but I also love riding in the mountains because I feel riding a lot in plains gets boring after some time. 3-4 days in the plains is great and you enjoy all these long gallops. But then I love my mountains. So I guess I would go for the mountains and the technical rides eventually. Great.
And Heather, what about you?
Well, I'm probably the same. Everybody loves a good gallop. I don't like a gallop just to cover distance. If we're, if I'm out on a ride and there's, the scenery is beautiful, crossing rivers and streams, and I like kind of the pokey, plodding along walk where, you can enjoy the scenery, enjoy the companionship of who you're riding with. But there's nothing better than galloping on a beach with, the water splashing up, and, it's that freedom, that feel that you get where you're just going. And so a combination of both for me.
And do you guys have a essential travel item that you can't leave without? Like for me, it's chapstick. I would die without it. Heather, I'll let you go.
So that's so funny that you asked that. I have a couple things. I have noise canceling earbuds that I have to have when I travel on an airplane. Sometimes I just put them in. I don't even listen to anything, but they seem to just cut that little bit of airplane noise. So that would be my number one, and chapstick. It seems that, if
it's like the worst feeling ever if you have it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And Ute, what about you?
Well, I can't travel without a book. Definitely. It's always, I usually carry a book even in my saddlebag.
The Equestrian Adventuresses series is a good, hashtag plug
definitely.
in.
Definitely. I can only recommend the books, the series. It's amazing stories. And I love reading about women and horses. So and any kind of book will do. And I usually carry it along, not really when I guide, but because then I have other things on my mind. But if I go for leisure rides, I usually carry a book, so that if I have somewhere a little break, I love to sit down with the horse, eat some grass, tie it up, and sit in the shade, read a bit. Chapstick is definitely important, particularly in a hot, dry country. It's very important. And I usually ride with a bandana, with some kind of thing, a kind of bandana. Basically, I usually tie it around my neck, but you can tie it around your mouth and nose if it's very dusty and you ride at the back, or you can tie it around the head. You can do so many things with it. I find it extremely versatile. Even if you have somewhere a little bleeding, or you want to put some water on somewhere, it's really great. So I usually have a kind of scarf or bandana with me when I ride.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Books and scarves, very useful items. Perfect. So I think I'm going to have to wrap up, unfortunately, because of the time. But it's been very interesting chatting with you guys. And it's great because, this is your first official episode, and the next episode you guys are going to be hosting. So it's really exciting to hear, more stories from you guys. And thank you so much for coming on tonight and for joining and taking over the podcast.
Thanks for having us.